This might be the greatest flashback, not just in One Piece history, but anime history. The God Valley flashback has ended with the conclusion of Garp and Roger versus Rocks, which we all believed would happen because Sengoku told us that Roger and Garp had to work together. But we just didn't know the details, and man, the details were very interesting. This chapter alone, not just a flashback, has so many discussion topics that I can do videos on, so I definitely am excited to talk about this. And let's just go to that last page. That last page was insane, and that's how you end a flashback. Roger using one of his strongest, if not his strongest attack I have ever seen. We've seen Roger versus Whitebeard hitting with that divine departure. Yes, that was pretty strong, and Roger should be stronger than when he's on God Valley, even though he was a little sick. But what he did on God Valley to me was his strongest attack. I believe the pronunciation was Kagutsuchi Ace, or I think it was the God of Fire Ace. I don't know what the actual translation is. I'm gonna wait for, of course, Sunday. But Garp's attack was Infinite Explosion. And talking about Garp's attack for a second, it kind of reminded me of Luffy's Gatling we've seen against Lucci and many iconic figures. If I'm being completely honest here, Garp was giving me Luffy vibes and Roger was giving me Ace vibes. Now I must admit, we all know Roger and Luffy have the Pirate King parallel. We know Garp and Ace and their relationship during Marineford. We just know that these characters are all connected. It's Gold D Roger, Gold D Ace, Monkey D Garp, Monkey D Luffy. But if I'm being honest here, I feel like Garp and Roger is kind of like a combination of Luffy in a sense, where Luffy has the fighting style of Garp, but he also has the pirate-esque charisma of Roger. All I'm going to say is this, yo, that straw hat on Roger, but that fighting style on Garp, you're seeing a lot of things that connect to Luffy. And if I'm being honest here, Roger and Garp, it's crazy to say that even though they were rivals, they should have been on the same side. Just looking at what they did on God Valley, imagine Roger and Garp going to Mary Joa's right before Roger died together to take down Imu. For Rocks, of course, that get back. What a great flashback as we see the Rocks crew ending. It's GG's for them. Great flashback. The world government, of course, tried to stop, but there's one thing they couldn't erase. They couldn't erase God Valley and the history and the details and everything, but they can't erase the destructive shock of the Rocks crew separating, because they didn't just have Rocks Xebec that was known worldwide. There was Edward Newgate, there was Charlotte Linden, there was Shiki, Silver Axe, Captain John, Kaido. Like, the list goes on of legendary figures. Ochoku, who wasn't even there, who sold out Chaki to start this God Valley incident. I'm telling you guys right now, they all started their own crew, all had strong crew, and they are rivals to Roger. You gotta admit, yo, the hype of God Valley definitely lived up to it. And now I'm excited for Elbaf. This flashback's over, but I'm excited for Elbaf, guys. And going over some of the choreography of the fight, we see Rocks is tanking Roger and Garp's attacks. And he actually doesn't just tank their attacks, he overpowers them with his own Conqueror's Haki, splitting the skies by himself, which in my opinion is more impressive than Luffy during Wano when he woke up as Gear 5th, splitting the skies by himself, because Rocks did it while interacting with the strongest marine and strongest pirate in Garp and Roger, overpowering them, sending them flying into the mountain, and then of course doing the Conqueror's Haki blast. That is insane. And mind you, Rocks is not even all the way up there. This is a demon reverse, Dami reverse Rocks, yo. So this is gonna be a lot of discussion on how strong is Dami reverse Rocks compared to regular Rocks. I do think Dami reverse Rocks is stronger than regular Rocks, but I do think when it comes to fighting choreography, Rocks would have done a little bit better when it comes to skill, because he would be more conscious, where this monster doesn't even look that conscious. He's just crying, yo. If I'm being honest here, it kind of reminded me when Kaido was drunk and he was crying. But this is more deeper because he's crying because he just wants to be ended, yo. He knows that he lost. It was too early for him to fight Imu. And speaking of Imu, I definitely need to talk about this moment in the chapter. Roger actually comments on Imu and that black monster and if that's justice. And Garp agrees with Roger, and as Garp agrees, Roger offers Garp a spot in his crew. Now imagine if Garp actually agreed to that. That would mean that Roger would have a ship of Monkey D. Garp, Silver's Rayleigh, Scarpa Gabon, and Kozuki Odin. 4 of the strongest Conqueror's Haki users in the series. Mind you, we just seen Scarpa Gabon and Elbaf do Conqueror's Haki coding. We know Rayleigh has Conqueror's Haki coding when he interacted with Blackbeard during Amazon Lily, when Boa Hancock was, of course, being choked by Blackbeard. We know that Kozuki Odin used Conqueror's Haki coding to scar Kaido during the fight they had, before, of course, he was ultimately killed, boiled. And of course, we know Roger with his strongest Haki that transcends all, that Like Kaido gave him the utmost respect. Imagine Garp joining that crew. Garp in this chapter is explaining conqueror's Haki to Roger. Imagine him joining that crew. The Roger pirates would be surpassed. In my opinion, they would surpass the Rocks pirates because you have Roger and Rocks relatively same level. Then you have Garp and Whitebeard, what you could say relatively same level, but some would even say Garp is above because Haki transcends all. Then you go after that, Silver's Rayleigh and Shiki. That's a toss up there. Then you go Scarper Gabon and Big Mom. That's a toss up there. Then you go Kuzuki, Odin, and Kaido. That's a toss up. Or you can put any other character that's in the Rocks Pirate. I'm telling you guys right now, the Roger Pirates were going to be legit. And we know there's a bunch of mid tier and low tier Roger Pirates that are incredibly strong that Oda hasn't even highlighted yet. I think he's saving that for the ultimate Goldie Roger flashback. But I'm telling you guys right now, I'm giving a lot of respect if Garp agreed to it. And I must say this, guys, when it comes to Garp saying that he, of course, has to protect the Marines. Like, who's going to protect the Marines? This is a valid reason why Garp never left the Marines. Because he loves the Marines. He's been a Marine for so long, and he wants to protect it. His son became a Marine because of him. It wouldn't make sense for him just to leave and give up and say, oh, I'm going to join the Pirates and give up. No, he's not going to do that. He's going to protect the Marines in his own justice, of course. And now that he's, of course, captured by Teach, we're going to get the conclusion of Garp's storyline. As we got Rogers, of course, starting the Great Pirate Era, I think Garp is going to be very interesting. This is the same Garp that went up against Imu, Rocks, Roger, so many legends, and now is still alive and Blackbeard has him captured. Insane stuff. I love how Roger starts speaking logic to Garp. I've always felt like Roger is a very logical guy. It probably is the biggest difference between him and Luffy of how logical he is. Like him explaining to Whitebeard how the process of him, of course, achieving getting the last treasure, the last island, the road poneglyphs and one, and how he needed Kazuki Oden. Luffy doesn't talk like Roger does. I'm being honest, guys. He's a very logical guy, and he's bringing logic to Garp when it comes to the mass, as Garp questions like, what is he talking about? And of course, Roger explains himself. Unlike Luffy, he rarely explains himself. He says Armor Haki normally counters Devil Fruits, and he's even adding Conqueror's Haki coding to his attacks as well. There's no way his attacks shouldn't be doing nothing. And of course, Garp is not really a logical guy, but he's more of a facts guy, and he just drops the facts. Rocks is guarding with Conqueror's Haki. It's no surprise that they're being canceled each other out. So, of course, Roger says exactly, of course, because he, of course, agrees with the facts that Garp is displaying. And this, to me, is a very interesting dialogue. Of course, people look at it as Garp teaching Roger Haki. I didn't look at it like that. I looked at more so that Garp more so confirming what Roger's speaking on in a more factual base, where Roger's just more so breaking down the framework of it. You have to understand, Garp is more fact-based as Roger is more logical. This is something that's been shown throughout the story in their character psychology, if you actually look at it. And I must admit, the beginning of the chapter is one of the most important beginning of the chapters I've ever witnessed in the One Piece story. Garp and Roger are hearing the voice of all things from Rocks, showing that these three, of course, shaped the era because these three also had the voice of all things, one of the most important powers I've seen in the One Piece story. As Rocks is crying to be killed with Conqueror's Haki coating leaking off his sword. So it's crazy when you see Roger say none of this adds up, as of course Roger's sword clashes with Rocks and Garp punches Rocks' face with Conqueror's Haki coating like Luffy did to Kaido. Now I must admit, Rocks does tank it a bit better than Kaido, but he is Demon Reverse Rocks. It's kind of like Kaido. It kind of reminds me of Kaido because he had the horns and he has the teeth, fangs, and Kaido in his hybrid form looks kind of similar to that, and that's Kaido's captain. But if I must admit, guys, he's taking a punch from Garp's fist to his face while clashing with Roger's sword. This is showing how powerful Rocks is. Don't deny, don't downscale him, guys. Yo, he is insanely powerful. Just him being Demon Reverse is making Garp and Roger the two strongest of the strongest struggle. They're struggling with I guess in a 2v1. That just shows you how strong is Rocks if he's just regular, not Demon Reverse. Is Rocks stronger than Roger and Garp? Because it does look like they're relative, and Demon Reverse makes him, of course, amplified and makes them have to team up. But it could be a situation where maybe Rocks was that strong even without the Demon Reverse that he is above Garp and Roger. The discussions are going to be there for a very long time until Oda shows a little more concrete evidence of Garp fighting Rocks or Roger fighting Rocks. More so Roger fighting Rocks, because I don't think Garp and Rocks fought that many times, if I'm being honest, if they even fought at all. And I want to talk about how we see Garp call for Rocks in a sense to bait him out. I love the choreography in this fight. I didn't expect it. I thought Oda was just gonna skim through it because it's the flashback. He doesn't want to give us too much hype because imagine the flashback surpasses the conclusion of Elbaf. And of course, when Garp calls off for Rocks, he then dodges Rock's attack, which is massive. As of course Roger goes behind Rocks and gets his back with a slash, leading to Garp grabbing his leg and throwing him like he did Asano Wolf, of course, during that interaction with Aokiji and the Blackbeard Pirate. As then Roger comes from up top with his attack as they try to undo this curse and wake up Rocks. Now, two things I got from this. Great choreography, great teamwork from Garp and Roger. But also, the fact they're trying to wake him up and not kill him says a lot. That means they're definitely holding back in these exchanges. Now, I do want to say, thirdly, I must admit the fact that Rocks is falling for these like dumb moves, in my opinion, shows that he's not super conscious. Yes, he's stronger than his regular self, but he's not as mindful and skillful as his regular self. And I must admit, in this exchange, it does show that Rocks is just tanking their attacks. Yes, they're powerful attacks, but Rocks, they're not really going through Rox's guard because his coding is that strong. And Roger, of course, towards the end of the fight admits it, says, "We can't win in a battle electrician with Rocks because he's in his demon form. He's a monster." As Garp realizes Roger wants them to go all out with Conqueror's Haki in their next attack. And Garp admits to him, "Yeah, that's a good idea, Roger, but we might not survive if we do this." And Roger says either way, either going to take us all out or pretty much we're going to win. It's kind of like we have no choice. And pretty much says if you don't land it, it's GG's, it's game over. So I like the interesting explanations. I couldn't say explanations, more so thought out battle strategies that are happening in this fight. Very interesting from two of the top tier in the One Piece all-time story. Now, lastly, this is probably the last important thing I think I must talk about when it comes to this One Piece chapter 1165. Garp says he can feel Rox's frustration, which I feel is pretty interesting how Garp is just witnessing Rox go through it. But I think Roger saying this is no time for tears while crying was a big deal. Don't forget what Shanks said when Luffy lost Ace. He said it's okay to cry. There's many times that he wished Roger cried and he didn't. Now think about this, Shanks. You were, of course, joining the the Roger Pirates after God Valley. So you don't understand that many times you thought Roger would cry and he didn't. Roger did cry in God Valley. Roger did have moments of crying. But what he went through on God Valley probably is the reason why Roger would never cry again. Because seeing Rox in that state, nothing has destroyed him and broke him as seeing a rival of him, if not his greatest rival, in a state that pathetic, crying like that while fighting. It just, Roger couldn't understand it. And it definitely brought him to tears. And now I think I understand what Shanks said. Yo, Roger, of course, he just been built through battles and battles. That's one thing I gotta give to the Pirate King. Unlike Luffy, who's pretty much speed running his journey as a pirate, Roger took a very long journey, moments, decades, if you want to be honest, through his time as a pirate. And that's why he's more stone cold than Luffy, in my opinion. That's why he started the Great Pirate Era. Yes, he's not Luffy, who's Joy Boy, who's going to defeat Imu, but he is the important piece which caused Luffy to defeat Imu. Now, some minor things that I do want to talk about in this chapter. Silver Axe is running, of course. Not really running, but more so jumping on a ship as he knows the Rocks Pirates are over. My thoughts on Silver Axe is not really that impressed by him, if I'm being honest, guys. Yes, he's the rival of Shiki. Yes, Sengoku named him. Yes, he was Kyo here. He wasn't Silver Axe yet. But I'm going to be honest with you guys, yo. He definitely got his ass handed to him by Marco's father, which I will talk about. And then, of course, Shiki, which I was impressed by Shiki. His moment of having that four-way attack with Whitebeard, Kaido, Big Mom. Obviously, these four would be the new emperors of the sea. If you don't want to say Kaido, then probably Shiki, Roger, Whitebeard, and Big Mom are like the four emperors of the sea. But still, that was pretty cool. And then, of course, Gangri getting hyped up by defeating Captain John, a legendary pirate. And then, of course, Gangri getting defeated by Shiki. Shiki was getting sneak attack just like Captain John, showed how powerful Shiki was, if I'm being honest. And him, of course, announcing the Rocks Pirates are done just shows you why he wasn't there when, of course, they were fighting Imu. Like, he doesn't have no camaraderie for Rocks. And I will make an entire Shiki video of his Rocks Pirate journey because he's probably the most interesting Rocks Pirate in my opinion. Oda definitely didn't know what to do with this guy because he was so strong, but Oda didn't want him having him in key moments when it comes to the Rocks Pirates. And he is an original Rocks Pirate. That's the funny part. I also love how Garp and Roger tell their crew to leave. Of course, Garp telling them to save all the Marines and then leave. Of course, Roger saying leave when Rayleigh gets on ship, of course, because Rayleigh has Haki. And then they say it together. They'll definitely make it back for sure. This is a hype moment because Roger looks exactly like Ace and Garp looks exactly like Luffy. And I loved it. Just reading that. Yeah, you can read spoilers and everything, but seeing that panel, it just makes it all the better. Yo, the picture says 1,000 words. That's why I wait for the chapter. That before I can even make a video on the chapter. Like, I ain't gonna read spoilers like some guys do, and just so I can upload the algorithm and get, I don't do that shit, yo. Wait for the chapter so you can actually get a better understanding of what I'm saying rather than a cheapskate video, which I'm not gonna do to you guys. Garp now admits he wanted to capture both Rox and Roger, and I find this funny because he never mentioned Rox at all. It was just Roger this and Roger that. Obviously, Garp and Roger have a more stronger rivalry than Rox. In my opinion, I think Rox and Garp more so look at each other as like more respect in a sense than Roger and Garp, even though they would gain to have more respect through their journeys. I do want to say this though, no Whitebeard mentioned by Garp is pretty bad for the Whitebeard fans, as Roger then asks for a truce and Garp says there is no choice as they can't leave Rox like this. We're starting to see why or how Sengoku mentioned these two work together, a Marine and pirate, which Garp never thought in his wild days would be working with a pirate. This kind of reminds me of Smoker and Luffy, a pseudo moment like this in Alabasta, but we never got the official thing. Maybe in Punk Hazard 2 as well, but I think we're probably gonna get that more so with Kobe and Luffy towards the end of the story, if I'm being honest. Also, gotta talk about Gloriosa. She was nowhere to be found in this God Valley flashback. Very underwhelming in my opinion, because I thought she was incredibly powerful. She was the Empress of Amazon Lily. We know her old self was helping Luffy, but I wanted to see her young prime self do some damage as she joined the Rox Pirates, but she just tags on Roger's ship at the end. As Rayleigh did comment on Rox's Haki being strange, so I do want to say this is not the regular Rox Haki. Rayleigh has probably seen Rox Haki before. They've fought the Roger Pirates before, so I definitely feel like Rox has a more demon Conqueror's Haki, which goes to the Gorosei Conqueror's Haki and goes to Imu's Conqueror's Haki, which is going to be a whole Conqueror's Haki encyclopedia explanation coming soon in Elbaf. I also want to talk about how we get foreshadowing of Big Mom versus Kaido on Wano, as Big Mom says, you have to pay me back for that. And Kaido's like, I got it fair and square, as they argue like brother and sisters. And Big Mom says, you'll never beat me, as Kaido says, one day I'll crush you. If you try to get your get back, I will crush you. And it's foreshadowing to them actually fighting on Wano and then teaming up and then losing to the new generation. I think Big Mom and Kaido are some of the more interesting characters on God Valley, but definitely it's kind of bittersweet seeing them just talk like this because we know they're ending. Pretty much it's going to be pretty brutal. Of course, they are incredibly powerful on Wano. I still believe on Wano, Big Mom and Kaido were the strongest characters, even when they lost. That's how strong they were. And they did get stronger, in my opinion, from God Valley to Wano. Wano, I think Big Mom and Kaido are stronger than their young selves, in my opinion. Also gotta admit, I loved seeing that little panel of Rox working Roger. I felt like Oda should have done this because it shows that, okay, the Rox is not conscious, but he's still that strong where he's bullying Roger and Garp. And seeing that moment of Roger getting bullied by Rox was definitely cool. It kind of added up. It kind of reminded me of Big Mom versus Kid and Law. That's the vibe I was getting with this fight, if I'm being honest, when it comes to them even talking about their final attacks. That's still kind of like Kid and Law and talking about awakening and stuff. I got a lot of Kid and Law versus Big Mom vibes. And if I'm being honest, you got to respect Kid and Law more so, because Garp and Roger did it. Why can't I respect Kid and Law? They did it to fight a Yonko and Big Mom. Garp and Roger did it to fight a monster in Rox. Also, Polo Graham, this guy, we already see him kicking Silver Axe's ass, so we know he's powerful. More so in a sense where he's one of the top tier level Rox pirates. And then he confirms that Whitebeard did break that mountain when Rox threw him in there, and Whitebeard's Delphi too as well, as Whitebeard did look unscathed. So I definitely think Whitebeard could have continued fighting Rox if he wanted to, but of course, that's his captain. He's not going to fight his captain. Yes, he's going to tank the attack and clash with it. He's not going to fight his captain, as of course we see the first ever crew member of the Whitebeard Pirates. It's Polo Graham, the father of Marco, the 1st Division commander. I love Oda adding a little bit of lore into the Whitebeard Pirates, because we know there's going to be more lore when Kazuki Oden, the brother of Whitebeard, and of course many other Whitebeard pirates that would later on be at Marineford, like Jozu, and of course Marshal D. Teach betraying Whitebeard, and maybe Thatch gets introduced later on. I'm telling you guys right now, I enjoy seeing the Whitebeard pirates and the originate of the Whitebeard pirates, because this crew would be strong enough to then fight the Roger pirates years later, so that's pretty cool. Gil Bastar, this guy has Perona's Delphi. This guy's one of the most weirdest characters, and giving Perona's Delta Food, I definitely think Oda just said, yeah, he's a weird character, let me just give him a weird Delta Food in Perona's. And I gotta say, it's making more sense because Thriller Bark is so connected to God Valley. We see Gang Jui there surviving God Valley, but we know his body's on Thriller Bark. We know Captain John's body's on Thriller Bark. We're getting a lot of God Valley vibes with Thriller Bark. I wonder what Oda's gonna confirm through this, but definitely gotta say, love to see this Guild Bar start Perona stuff. Like, people get mad at these Delphus being reoccurring, like, of course, kids, Delphu being on Captain John. I love it, yo. It adds more to the lore of the Delphus. Also, Monkey D. Dragon stands on business as he pretty much puts a gun to his superior's head and says, you better put these survivors on the ship. Monkey D. Dragon in God Valley has some of the best characterization, in my opinion, and development, as it's showing how he shaped up to be the world's most wanted man and the leader of the revolutionary army, going strictly against the world government. God Valley and in the O'Hara incident, like, there's a lot of reasons why Dragon is like, fuck Imu, and I don't mind, guys. Even though I don't think he knows of Imu, I don't think he's ever interacted with Imu, but he definitely knows some rumbling because he's on God Valley and then hearing about Nerona Imu. I think that Dragon knows something. He's just playing a little coy right now, and I think he's going to be super hyped when he fights, guys. That's the son of Monkey D. Garp. You saw what Monkey D. Garp did on Con Valley? You saw what Luffy did on Wano? Yeah. Father of Luffy, son of Garp, in his prime. Come on, guys. Come on. Really? Also loved how Oda added Silver's Rayleigh and Scarpa Gabon coming back to God Valley, riding out with Roger in a sense, waiting for Roger's fight to be over on God Valley. It kind of gave me Zoro and Sanji vibes, guys. And I loved it. I love Silver's Rayleigh and Scarpa Gabon. They are the wings of the Pirate King, and they're doing what wings should be doing. Also thought it was pretty funny how Imu's still controlling Saturn, saying the island never existed, as the narrator confirms the erased history of the Davy Island, which I'm not surprised. So much things happen on the island, you have to erase it. CP6, they talk about that. They talk about how it's a level S mission. They just talk about a lot of things, but pretty much what they're saying is God Valley never existed. And world government loves to erase things like the Void Century, and Imu was the winner of the Void Century and erased that entire century, so not surprised he wanted to erase God Valley, yo. This guy likes to erase anything that has a resistance to what he's trying to do, complete his world.